Okay, so we've got our partition created. Let's go ahead and figure out how to format it. So the command that we're going to use, and there are a lot of commands that you can use to format partitions, but the one that I want to talk about first is MKFS, and this stands for Make File System. There's a couple typical ways that this can be used, but the way we're going to use it here is I'm going to say MKFS, and then we're going to give it a type of file system that we want it to use. This one should be fine. This is ext4. And then we're going to give it the name of the partition that we want it to add a file system to, dev sdb b1. Okay. Now, as a general rule, you're not going to want to make a file system on anything that's currently mounted. Um, and when we talked about mounting things, one of the things that I want you guys to be aware of is SDB1 right now, even though it's a partition on a file system, or even though it's a partition on a hard drive that we have, it's not necessarily something that I can CD to. I haven't put it on the file system yet, and when I do, I'm going to use the same sort of mount command that I did when I was attaching a CD-ROM to the file system. Okay, let's see if this works, and it looks like it works just fine. That didn't take long at all, and so we've gone ahead and created a file system. Now, there's some other file system commands here that we would use something other than MKFS if we were trying to create a particular file system, but MKFS has a whole bunch of stuff in here. I'm not sure if it actually lists all the things that the that it can use. By default, it's ext2. And I think that's about all we need to know about that. It doesn't have a list of all the file system types in there, which is unfortunate. Anyway, we've now added a file system to our system. So what we need to do at this point is we need to mount it on the system. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to /media and see what we've got in there. It doesn't look like I have anything in there. But at this point, what I want to be able to do is take SDB2 and have that be attached to my file system at some place, right? So where that place is up to me. I can put it at /Garrett. I can put it at /I like Star Wars. I can put it at /data1. It doesn't really matter. It's up to me to just make something up. But you're probably going to want to have something that makes sense to you, and it makes sense to other people that use the system. So it's traditional that if you just have extra storage like this, that's not going to be, say, replacing everybody's home directory, to put it in the root level. So I could do something like create /data1. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back out here to / and I'm going to say mkdir data1. Okay. Now, this is going to be used as a mount point. If I cd into data1, there's nothing here, remember? So what, it's a brand new folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use it as a place to put dev sdb1. So I have that in the system. Okay, so the way I'm going to do that is this is going to be really similar to the command that we used to mount a CD-ROM, but I'm going to say mount dev sdb1 to /data1. And there's about a 50% chance that I got this in the wrong order, so let's go ahead and see. It looks like it worked. And so if I go into cd data1 now, you can see that we have a lost and found directory there. That's a typical sort of artifact of file systems that have what did we have, of ext4. So if you create an ext4 file system and you see a lost and found directory, this doesn't mean that anything bad has happened. To the contrary, it actually means that's the correct things have happened. So if I do an lsblk now, you can see that this looks a little bit different. I've got an SDB here and then an SDB1, and it actually shows me where SDB1 is mounted on the file system. I've got something that says data1. Okay, so at this point I can go ahead and I've got this new sort of think of this as a whole place I can put stuff that is just an empty file. It just is not, instead of being like the D drive, it's in slash data1. So if I do a df minus h, this is another command that just gives you a list of how full various things are. You can see that this shows up as a file system that we've got here. Um, Only has 6 megabytes, and 1.8 is available. By the way, this dash H here means human readable. If you don't put that in there, it gives it to you in actual bytes or 1K blocks, which is a little bit less fun to try to interpret. Um, if you do attack that or attack H at the end of that, makes it a lot easier to read. Um, so this is great. This means that we have a file system that we've now attached to our Linux box. So we've almost made it to our goal. The problem here is that if I reboot this machine, Linux is not going to remember that this is something that I attached to the file system. If I wanted to get to it again, I would have to do the same thing where I try to go do a mount thing. Now, the rest of the stuff like creating a file system or doing a partition, that's already done. It's going to remember that, but the part where it actually attaches that to the file system is not something that it's going to remember. So how do we get it to be persistent? Well, the way we're going to do that is to go look at this file right here called etcfs tab. Now, I'm using VI here, but the etcfs tab. If you are using a text editor that you're not familiar with and you booger it up, this is a good way to make your machine not boot again. Yeah, so be really careful with this if you want to log into X Windows as root and then use the Notepad application here, or if you want to use one of the other text editors that we've talked about. This is usually the place in the class where most students, if they're going to brick their machine, this is where they do it, because if we mess up at CFS tab, then the machine might not boot anymore. Things get really exciting. So what we can see here, this is our way of telling Linux what file systems it's supposed to mount when it boots up. Okay, so the way this is going to work is I'm going to go ahead, and if you're trying to do this in VI, I'm going to try to do this as slowly as possible to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm typing in O, so now I'm in insert mode. And I should be able to put information in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put dev sdb1 because that's the partition name. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit tab, and then I'm going to put where I want this to be mounted, which is, I think we said data 1. Is that right? I'm going to actually cheat here and say new tab df minus h, and that was data 1, so that's right. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is it's going to ask me for the file system type. Now that's something I should remember because I just typed it in, but I actually don't because it's been a long day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open another tab here, and I'm just going to type the command mount. Now, the mount command can do a whole lot of different things, but what I'm looking for now is it gives me a lot of detail about what's currently mounted. And it tells me that right there's the file system type ext4, which I should have remembered because I typed it in just a minute ago. So I'm going to type ext4, and then I'm going to come over here and say defaults 0, 0. Defaults 00 has to do with how Linux is treating a hard drive. That's a little bit more detail than we need to go into right now. But what we should be able to see is that if we have this line in here, and this is the only line that I changed, then what we should be able to do, and this is going to be the big test, is we should be able to reboot this machine. And then it should come up with SDB1 mounted on /data. All right. So that's what we're trying to do. If you have accidentally gone ahead and erased another line in at CFS tab, do not save your changes. Or just do a Q bang like this to get out of it. Do not modify this file. Do not change any of the lines that are in there. All we're doing is adding another line. All right. So what I should be able to do here, if we did this correctly, is I should be able to reboot this, and
it should come back up. If it comes back and the drive is not there, then I didn't I did something wrong. But the other thing is that if I try to boot this and when Linux is booting, if it gets confused by what's supposed to happen in the etcfs tab file and it doesn't know what those drives are, sometimes it won't boot at all. So this can be something that's potentially fraught with peril here. And I would advise you, if you're doing this to your machine, make sure that you already have a clone before you save these changes, which you should have done. And Make sure you don't make any inadvertent changes to the etcfs tab file. So let's go ahead and see if this boots up and everything's there, or if I have to reshoot this video until it does. So let's see what's going on here. So far, this looks like it's a fairly good sign. Usually, if I've messed up the etcfs tab file by this point, it will not have booted at all. So this is good so far. All right, let's go ahead and open a terminal again, and let me just do a df-h and see what we've got. And look at this, STB1 is right there. If I cd to data 1, it looks like I've logged in. I can see that this is here. It's working. It showed up automatically. So this all worked like we wanted it to. Just to make sure that we can all see that, let me cat etcfs tab again so you guys can get another look at this line. This is what I put in here. Now, if you did this for your machine, dev SDB1 is going to be the same. If you decided to use a different mount point, something than other than data 1, then that's what would need to be there. If you used a different file formatting system, or if you use the default, you're going to need to have that in there. And then defaults 00 shouldn't have to change. So what we've done at this point is this is the equivalent of your manager walking into your office and saying, hey, the mail server is running out of space. I need you to add another hard drive to it. This is what you would do. This is actually sort of legitimate administering Linux in the real world sort of stuff. And if you have done this and it has worked on your VM, congratulations, good work. What I want you to do for the lab work today is take a screenshot of your machine after you have rebooted it, so just something that looks like this, and turn that in. This was a lot of material to go through in one day, but Chapter 5 has a lot of stuff in it, and we're probably going to be even doing more stuff next time. So make sure that you get this and that you understand how it works before we go on to the next system, because next time we're going to be talking about logical volume groups, and that is really exciting. So if you've I realize that we went through a lot of material today. It may be necessary to go back and watch these videos a couple times until you get it, but we're just getting into that point of the class where things get a little bit more challenging. So good luck. Be sure to clone your machine before you try any of this stuff, so if we brick it, we can always go back to an earlier version. And I think that's about all we need to talk about. So we'll finish up chapter 5 next time.